A car stops at the corner of a quiet Sarajevo street. A thin, pale teenager steps forward, pulls a pistol, and fires 2 shots. Within minutes, an heir to an empire is dying in the back seat of that car, cradled by his blood-soaked wife. Within weeks, Europe is on fire. Within months, the entire world is at war. How does a single assassination, carried out by a nervous 19-year-old, spiral into a conflict that kills over 20 million people and wipes empires off the map? Was it destiny, bad luck, or a chain of terrible decisions no one could stop? In this video, we're going to slow everything down. We'll walk the Sarajevo streets, sit in the palaces, read the telegrams, and trace, step by step, how one moment of violence toppled a continent like a row of dominoes. Stay with me, because by the end, you may never look at small events the same way again. To understand how those 2 gunshots could reshape the world, we need to zoom out, way out. This isn't just a story about one assassin and one archduke. It's about an entire continent packed with gunpowder, waiting for a spark. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll break this into clear stages. Who Franz Ferdinand was, why Bosnia mattered, how the conspirators formed, what actually happened on that chaotic June morning, and, most importantly, how governments reacted in the tense weeks that followed. We'll look at telegrams, war plans, secret societies, and some almost unbelievable coincidences. If you're into history, geopolitics, or simply love understanding how one decision leads to the next, you're in exactly the right place. And if you enjoy this kind of deep dive storytelling, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. For now, watch through to the end, because the final dominoes will genuinely surprise you. Before bullets fly in Sarajevo, we need to meet the man in the car. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. He's the heir to a sprawling, fragile empire that stretches across Central and Eastern Europe, ruling over Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Poles, Serbs, Croats, and more. Franz Ferdinand is not particularly beloved. He's conservative, blunt, and mistrusted by many in the imperial court. Yet he's also one of the few high-ranking figures considering serious reforms, reshaping the empire into a federation that might give Slavic peoples more autonomy. To Serbian nationalists, though, he's a symbol of occupation. Bosnia and Herzegovina, recently annexed by Austria-Hungary, are filled with Slavs who many Serbs believe should be part of a greater Serbian or South Slavic state. So when Franz Ferdinand decides to visit Sarajevo in June 1914 to observe military maneuvers on the empire's most sensitive frontier, it's not just a routine royal tour, it's a provocation and a tempting target. Now, step into the Balkans, Europe's geopolitical pressure cooker. For decades, the Ottoman Empire has been retreating, leaving behind a vacuum filled by ambitious neighbors, Austria-Hungary pushing south, Russia claiming to protect fellow Slavs, and small Balkan states, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, fighting for land and prestige. Serbia emerges from the Balkan Wars of 1912-1913, bloodied but emboldened, nearly doubling its territory. Nationalists dream of uniting all South Slavs, Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, into one nation. The problem? Many of those people live inside Austria-Hungary's borders. Austria's leaders see Serbia as a direct threat, a small, defiant kingdom inspiring separatism among their own subjects. Inside Serbia, official and unofficial groups blur together. Government officers, secret societies, radical students. This is where the Black Hand appears, a shadowy Serbian nationalist organization with ties to army intelligence. Its members believe only violence can break Austria's grip on the Slavic provinces, and they're watching Bosnia very closely. In Belgrade, a thin, tubercular teenager named Gavrilo Princip nurses coffee, radical ideas, and a deep sense of injustice. Born to a poor Bosnian Serb family, he's watched his homeland absorbed by Austria-Hungary. He's read nationalist tracts that paint assassins as martyrs and empire killers as heroes. Princip isn't alone. A circle of young Bosnian Serb students, influenced by revolutionary literature and older conspirators, talk in smoky cafes about tyrannicide, killing a tyrant to free their people. To them, Franz Ferdinand's planned Sarajevo visit is an opportunity written almost like fate. They are recruited, armed, and trained with the quiet assistance of elements inside the Serbian military intelligence network, including officers linked to the Black Hand. Pistols and bombs are smuggled across the border into Bosnia using clandestine routes and safe houses. The mission is clear: travel to Sarajevo, spread out along the Archduke's parade route, and seize any chance to strike a blow for the nation, no matter the cost. June 28, 1914. Vidovdan, an important Serbian national and religious holiday commemorating a medieval battle against the Ottomans. On this charged date, Franz Ferdinand arrives in Sarajevo with his wife Sophie, determined to show confidence in the recently annexed province. Security is astonishingly lax. The route is published in newspapers. Local officials worry, but Vienna dismisses elaborate precautions. It's peacetime, after all. Along the Appel Quay, 6 young conspirators take their positions, clutching pistols and crude bombs. As the open-top Graf and Stift car rolls past cheering crowds, the first assassins freeze, overwhelmed by fear or by the sight of Sophie in the car. Then one finds his nerve. Nedeljko Chabrinovic steps forward and hurls a bomb. It bounces off the Archduke's folded car roof and explodes under the following vehicle, wounding several officers and bystanders. Franz Ferdinand, furious but unharmed, continues to the town hall, unaware that the morning's drama has only begun. Inside Sarajevo's town hall, the atmosphere is surreal. The mayor begins his prepared welcome speech, praising peace and loyalty, while the Archduke stands there splattered with blood from the bomb victims. Franz Ferdinand interrupts sharply. "I come here on a visit and I get bombs thrown at me. It is outrageous." Yet, after a tense pause, the ceremony continues in a strained formality. Behind the scenes, officials scramble. The original plan is to visit the wounded at the hospital next, but no one properly coordinates a safer route. The governor suggests altering the drive to avoid the city center. The Archduke agrees, but the crucial detail never reaches the chauffeur of the first car. In an era before radios and security protocols, this kind of miscommunication is almost routine, so as the royal couple leaves the town hall, their car sets off along the familiar path, straight back onto the same streets where other conspirators, believing they have failed, are still wandering. Here's where history hangs on coincidence. One conspirator, Gavrilo Princip, believes the attempt has failed. After the bomb attack, crowds chase and arrest Chabrinovic. Security tightens around the main route. Princip, discouraged and hungry, drifts away from his assigned spot. He ends up near the Latin Bridge, outside a delicatessen. Meanwhile, the Archduke's motorcade leaves the town hall. The lead driver is still following the original route along the Appel Quay. A local officer, realizing the mistake, orders him to stop and turn around. The driver brakes, right in front of the delicatessen. Princip looks up. The car with Franz Ferdinand and Sophie is barely a few meters away, stalled. No security detail surrounds it, no crowd blocks his path. It is the kind of chance an assassin could never plan. He steps off the curb, draws his Browning pistol, and fires 2 shots at close range, aiming at the Empire's heart. The first bullet strikes Sophie in the abdomen. The second hits Franz Ferdinand in the neck. Inside the car, panic erupts. Witnesses later recall Sophie's last words, pleading with her husband not to die for the sake of their children. The Archduke, bleeding heavily, reportedly murmurs, "It is nothing," repeating it as consciousness fades. The driver speeds toward the governor's residence, but the wounds are catastrophic. Within roughly half an hour, both Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are dead. Princip attempts to turn the gun on himself, then swallow cyanide, but he's wrestled to the ground by bystanders and police. The poison is old and ineffective. He survives to face trial, though as a 19-year-old he's too young for the death penalty under Austro-Hungarian law. The immediate shock in Sarajevo is local, but in Vienna, Berlin, St. Petersburg, and beyond, news of the assassination lands like a thunderclap, setting hidden mechanisms into motion. Assassinations weren't new in the early 1900s. Kings and presidents had been killed before without triggering world wars. So why did this one ignite a global catastrophe? The answer lies in how Austria-Hungary chose to interpret the attack. Many in Vienna's leadership already saw Serbia as the mastermind of Slavic agitation within the empire. To them, the Sarajevo plot wasn't just a crime, it was proof that Serbia was a mortal threat that had to be crushed. Key hawks in the government and military, the so-called War Party, argue that this is the perfect pretext to settle accounts with Serbia once and for all, before its power and alliances grow stronger. But Austria-Hungary is weak and worried about Russia, so before acting they turn to their most important ally, Germany. In Berlin, Kaiser Wilhelm II and his advisors respond with what becomes known as the blank check, promising full support if Austria moves against Serbia. With German backing secured, Austria-Hungary drafts an ultimatum to Serbia that is intentionally harsh, so harsh that it's almost designed to be rejected. Demands include allowing Austrian officials to operate inside Serbia to suppress anti-Austrian activities, effectively undermining Serbian sovereignty. European diplomats are alarmed. Many recognize that punishing Serbia is one thing, but humiliating it risks dragging in Russia, Serbia's protector. Still, in late July 1914, most public statements remain cautiously optimistic. Wars, after all, had been avoided before through last-minute compromises. Serbia's response is remarkably conciliatory. It accepts most demands, offers arbitration on others, and promises to crack down on subversive groups. But Vienna, determined for a decisive showdown, seizes on the few points of refusal as justification. On July 28th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Artillery shells begin falling on Belgrade. Yet the real danger is not the guns on the Danube. It's the interlocking alliance system now awakening across Europe. Europe in 1914 is a web of promises and fears. On one side, the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. On the other, the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Britain, bound less by formal treaties than by shared concerns about German power. When Austria attacks Serbia, Russia feels compelled to act as guardian of the Slavs and as a great power unwilling to back down again after previous humiliations. It begins partial, then general mobilization, moving millions of men toward its borders with Austria and Germany. Germany, fearful of being sandwiched between Russia in the east and France in the west, activates the Schlieffen Plan, a pre-existing strategy that assumes war against both powers at once. That plan requires a rapid strike through neutral Belgium to quickly knock out France. Britain, long cautious, has pledged to defend Belgian neutrality. When German troops cross the Belgian border, London faces a fateful choice that will globalize the conflict. In the span of a week, diplomatic cables give way to mobilization orders and then to declarations of war. July 28th, Austria-Hungary versus Serbia. August 1st, Germany versus Russia. August 3rd, Germany versus France. August 4, Britain versus Germany, after the violation of Belgian neutrality. Each decision seems rational within its own narrow logic. Honor alliances, avoid appearing weak, strike before being struck. Yet combined, they create a runaway chain reaction, like dominoes carefully lined up over decades, now toppling too fast for anyone to stop. Ordinary citizens cheer in the streets, expecting a short, glorious war. Politicians speak of defending civilization, avenging wrongs, or seizing opportunity. Almost no one imagines years of trench warfare, industrial slaughter, and the collapse of 4 empires. It all traces back, in a direct but not simple line, to a wrong turn in Sarajevo, a young man with a pistol, and a continent primed to leap from crisis to cataclysm. Stepping back, what do we actually learn from the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and the road to World War I? First, Small events matter most when they hit a system already under intense strain. The Balkans were a fault line. The assassination was just the final tremor that released enormous stored pressure. Second, personalities and miscommunications count. From the Archduke's risky visit to lax security to the wrong turn that placed his car in front of Princip, contingencies piled up. In the weeks that followed, leaders misread each other's intentions, assuming that mobilization and threats could be controlled. Third, rigid plans and alliances can turn a local crisis into a global disaster. The Schlieffen Plan, the blank check, and secret commitments left very little room for creative diplomacy. And finally, history's domino chains are rarely inevitable. At many points, different choices were possible. Understanding those choices is what keeps this story relevant today. If you've stayed with this story from the Sarajevo sidewalks to the war rooms of Europe, you've seen how fragile peace can be, and how a single violent moment can unleash forces far beyond what its actors ever imagined. But this video is just a starting point. There's so much more behind each piece. The conspirators' trials, the lives of ordinary Bosnians, the propaganda campaigns, and the way World War I reshaped borders and societies that still affect us today. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss upcoming deep dives into the crossroads of history, where small decisions change everything. Drop a comment with which part of this chain reaction surprised you most, or what event you'd like to see covered next. And if you want to keep going right now, check the playlist on screen for more episodes on the origins and turning points of major conflicts.